So for zero trust, no, we'll have some discussion on it. Yeah, okay, just two slides, no. It was designed even in 1994. Basically, Google is also applying this to their own environment. That any device is not to be trusted by default. And again, even if they're connected to a sensitive network and all checks pass, even if they were previously verified, you do not trust them. You always validate any data that they are or activity that they're trying to do in the network. So, ayun, in the complex environment of Open RAN, no, trusting devices, again, it's not, and components, no, it's not really uh, recommended. Again, you are dealing with components that is manufactured by different vendors. One of those could have been compromised, or one of those could have vulnerabilities. So you want other systems and components to be ready and protected, no, in case one of them goes wrong. So Zero Trust, it's we have a National Cybersecurity Center, no, that has identified, no, key principles for this, like single strong source of user identity. You would typically be required to do uh, identity access management system to deploy and perform user authentication, machine authentication, and additional context, no, for policies like you are authenticating. Do you have MFA? Are you using your required machine? No? And does that machine have agents, antivirus, and patch level that is up to our standard before you're even authorized? And is that machine on a location that you are expected, no? Like home, office, or maybe just geolocation based, no, country within the Philippines, no? Or are you logging in from, let's say, some country in South Africa? So, or South Africa. So that's not that's gonna hit some of this checks, no, and you would hit policy violation. And even though you have the password and you have your MFA, the system might decline, no, yung login. Okay. Um, for that, now we have a reading again. The NIST SP 800-207, which is basically the zero trust architecture, for you to have an idea what entails zero trust. And even though 59 pages, this is still just an intro for zero trust. Okay. Then we have next is defense in depth, where we are trying to defend, no, against virus attack, and in case something goes wrong, no, there is still another security control, no, that would protect against full on compromise, no. So let's say for this one, so you have physical defense and control, where no, not everyone could gain access to your premise. No, you have fence, you have guard dogs, you have CCTVs for deterrent. Then you have your technical controls. No, yung hardware and software natin is restricted. We have let's say antivirus, uh, this encryption, if the data gets lost, you are being authenticated. So that's sample of technical controls. There's also admin controls like policies and procedures that could set the employee in trouble in case they have policy violations. Okay. Like let's say for hiring practices, do we do background checks? Do we validate the transcript? Do we validate previous employment? Data handling procedures. If you have the data, how do you process it? How do you destroy it? Who authorized the destruction? So those are also controls, no? Even though you don't have some administrative controls, ideally would have a corresponding technical control. No? So no one could just easily deviate from it. So principles again, uniform protection against across all networks, no, for part of this principle. No? They also want protected enclaves, no, where you uh, segment sensitive and critical segments deeper in the organization. Meaning, let's say your database, no, you don't typically put that on the DMZ. It is protected within the internal network. Information centric, no, you are not protecting servers, you're protecting the information. Okay, and then you have, of course, threat vector analysis. No, if um you have identified this risk, no? What controls do you have, no? On, let's say, an intrusion, no? So do you have firewall? Do you have a web application firewall? Do you have a host-based intrusion detection system, no? In case one of those components fail, may isa pang sasalo. Like, let's say for antivirus, no? Typically that's the last line of defense. No, come to think of it, no, last line of defense yung antivirus because you have firewalls, you have intrusion detection system that those information would be coming from. That's and from emails. No, let's say from emails, you have email gateways, no, that does the scanning and checking ng source. If it's a spam, if the address is weird, and then even within the email system, you usually have your own antivirus there. No, very limited for the most part, but in case that threat actor still bypasses those controls, no, and it gets delivered to the user's inbox, no, ideally there are still some controls within the host, like an antivirus detecting that, yeah, this is a known malicious software, and uh, in case it still bypasses the antivirus on the host, maybe you have an application whitelisting wherein the user inadvertently executed that attachment. The application whitelisting kicks in. No? Let's say that, okay, this software is not on the allowed list. It doesn't look malicious, but it's not on the allowed list, so I'm not gonna even start executing this. And that would have protected a lot of control organization against a major compromise. Again, you have a lot of controls, no, so you don't stop. No, let's say I'm protecting my network. I have a border firewall. That's okay. No, no. Even internal network, you segment them, you firewall them, and even outgoing traffic from your network. It's not ideal anymore. I would say it's mandatory that you filter outgoing traffic. We were taught for the past 30 years, no, that we could define, no, granular controls for data coming into our network. But if you see yung a lot of deployments, no, outgoing is heavily unrestricted. So if some machine gets compromised, it could easily call back to sa threat actor. So ideally, no, I would say mandatory. No, we need access control lists of for the data, no, coming out of our infrastructure. So that could easily filter then. And any violation, no, it's not unexpected traffic, but it hits a block, no, we could easily investigate. Why is this uh, open RAN component trying to connect to a machine, no, on outside the network? So we could see that. Okay. So for defense in depth, no, this is a bit dated. It's 2016, but still very relevant for industrial control systems, no, like critical infrastructure and especially communications. No? This is 58 pages. We estimate it to be 3 hours for discussion. And then we have principles of least privilege, sample implementation. No? Like you regularly review, no, and adjust user permissions and access rights that they still align, no, with current job roles. So this is becoming an issue on an employee na medyo matagal na sa organization, no, and moves, no, to different departments and roles. Typically, nire-retain yung roles kasi they still have something to do on yung previous task nila. And aside from retaining, no, nakakalimutan na. So, the review would be needed to detect this, no. And let's say a sample of policy, no, that I typically want implemented on any environment that I am managing is if there's a user account that hasn't logged in for a week, I would automatically disable it. No, not delete, no, just disable, no. Then sabi na, paano mo kung nag-leave lang ng 2 weeks, no, or maternity leave? Then I would actually say that if naka-leave ka, your account should have been actually disabled, no. Naka-link ka na sa HR system kasi you shouldn't be logging in anyway. So that policy na that auto disables the account after a certain number of days without login, it does help as an additional control in case some of these accounts fell through, no, the defense in depth. At least at mo mag-auto disable yung account. And in case the user really needs to log in, no, he would notify service desk, no, na yeah, I had my account, I think it's locked out kasi hindi ako naka-login for X number of days. So please re-enable it. And the service desk won't even change the password for the user, no? I-re-enable lang yan as the assumption that the user knows the password and naka-MFA siya. Okay? So, sample implementation ng principle of least privilege. No?